My name is Cheryl Eagleson. I live in Cincinnati and Mount Auburn. I identify as a woman. I'm a lesbian. My parents sent me down here to go to college in 1969, and then they moved down later. So I've been here since probably 73. I went to graduate school here.
Where'd you go to graduate school?
Xavier. I lived over in College Hill for a while, and then I moved to East Walnut Hills, and then partner and I bought a home on Highland Avenue in Mount Auburn in 1987, so I've been there since 1987 in a different house. But I had a girlfriend in high school, but nobody ever talked about that. You know, all those terms hadn't really come into play yet. And I had a girlfriend in college, and I don't think that I really started using all of the terms, I don't know, until maybe the 90s or something. It wasn't necessary. No, there weren't any in college and in graduate school. I was so busy, I had no time for, socializing, and back then, I really didn't have any. Let me back up and say that the proliferation of organizations didn't start happening until much later. Learning and behavior, which was perfect for me because I was in business, and learning how to understand what people are doing, reading them, was very helpful when you're in business and you're in sales and consulting, because then you can pace yourself because you are paying attention to them. And so it was it was great. It was actually out of early childhood, because people were trying to learn how people learn at different ages. And I didn't really care. I was on the road all the time, and it didn't matter to me. I needed to get a master's degree because there were very few women in business, and those who were, and there's nothing the matter with it, office managers and secretaries, and I didn't want that. And so I needed to get a master's degree, and then I was very well accepted and desired, because yay, we can, in business, in the financial world that I was in, having a woman with a master's degree was good. I got a Bachelor of Arts in Spanish and French, and a Bachelor of Science in Secondary Education. No, I got a double degree because I wanted to start building on, what I was going to present to the world. And maybe I didn't have it in my head in the terms that I'm giving to you now, but I knew what I wanted to do. Let's see. I got my master's in 1980. So let's see. I was working for a major insurance company, and then I went to an actuarial consulting firm, which was where I really wanted to get in. And then from there, I spent 10 years there, and then from there I went to what's now U.S. Bank and Institutional Trust. So banks have, their retail stuff that, you don't want to be in. And then trust companies, which are made up of corporate trust, personal trust, and institutional trust. And that's what I was in. That was my expertise. So that was it. That was where I needed to be. The vice president of the division was a woman. She liked the fact that I had all this background and I was ready to roll. It sounds arrogant, but I didn't want to get married for obvious reasons. I wanted to, be, beg your pardon, independent in the world. And so, I wanted to make sure that I could take care of myself and have an excellent career, so that I would not only have assets at that time, but now, when I'm 71, I have assets, so I'm safe. No, because it was irrelevant. And yes, some people had their pictures of their children and shit, and that's fine. But that's not, I wasn't trying to make friends there. I wanted to be friendly, and I wanted the people that I counted on to create my reports for me and so forth. But I wasn't going to do that, not because I was afraid or I was arrogant. It just wasn't appropriate. I entering the workforce in the 70s and in the 80s. I don't think it was, for me. I didn't really know about it. I don't think there was an organized. I mean, whatever it was, it wasn't really organized, and there weren't all the organizations that ultimately were put together for a variety of reasons, which I was part of. I don't think that the greater population of Cincinnati thought anything about it, because the people that were gay were so, people were under the table so much, and there were not organizations, and the city was. The city got to be, we have to move forward a few decades, but the city became very hostile to gay people when gay people started coming out and having organizations and, actually existing in society. Late 80s, early 90s. I had breakfast with Scott Knox, who's a longtime friend of mine, and we were talking about it, and I was like, my mind is just gone. I can't remember when he was like, I think it was in the 80s and late 80s and early 90s when organizations started pulling together. Yeah, but it was just all under the table. Mm-hmm. And again, a lot of organizations hadn't been developed yet, and gay bars were places where people met. Now, for example, my partner at the time and I and two male friends went to the Dock, which was down on Pete Rose Way, and they wouldn't let us in because we weren't wearing dresses, and that was like, they don't want women in here. So. It depended on the bar, and there were bars for the guys that liked to line dance, and and there was a bar on Calhoun Street that was strictly for women, Adam's Rib. It was just dreadful. I mean, it was just, there's a place for everybody. But the lesbians that were there were not my speed, and I wasn't their speed. No, bad feelings or anything, but it just wasn't a bar that I wanted to go to. I was more professional than they were, and trust me, we need blue-collar people. I have nothing against, we need them. So, but that wasn't, those folks were not who I was going to be able to bond friendship with. I like to go to private parties. Gay people threw parties all the time, and that's how we met one another. That's how I met a partner of mine, and because a lot of them, were professionals, and they didn't really want to go to bars. And let's go back to the Dock in the city of Cincinnati. the city of Cincinnati did not like gay people, and the more time passed and the more people were coming out and being visible, they did not like it. And Cincinnati police officers would often, not all the time, but there are examples of how they would wait until a guy, walked out of the bar and maybe walked up the street or whatever, who knows where, and they beat the shit out of him. So part of that awareness is that yes, the people that I hung out with, we were all business people. But if there was going to be a change and transformation in the city, then something was going to have to take place. And those two words have to be linked together. You can create change, but if it's not transformed into something better that moves you forward in one way or another, be it a group of people or what have you, it's culture, society, then it doesn't matter. So people were developing kind of political organizations. I do beg your pardon. And business organizations and so forth. And at that time, it was, people were starting to get to the point where we're going to have to talk to the city. And we're going to have to talk to people. We're going to have to talk to the police. And how do you do it? And there was an organization, it was long before HRC, called National Gay and Lesbian Task Force. And GLTF, it was all fun, but they wanted to teach people how to talk to businesses and how to talk to the city and government and all that. And groups of us would go to these GLTF conferences to learn how to do that, because it wasn't just having fun anymore. We were starting to realize that we're going to have to take this on, we being a variety of cohorts of people, and non-gay people too. I mean, it wasn't, there are a lot of very fair-minded non-gay people in this city, and more than too. So that started that change of how we interacted. We actually started interacting in a very business-like, calm way to start talking and saying, and one of the things that I said was, I'm a tax-paying citizen. How can you do this to me? How can you not allow people to buy houses in certain areas or just make it really hard for them when we pay taxes? It's hard to argue that. I mean, I wasn't out marching in the streets and the TV cameras all that much, because I wanted to. I spent a lot of time a few minutes ago talking about protecting my career. Right, as I was talking to you about, the guys like to do what is it? Huh?
Line dancing.
Yeah, line dancing. And so bars were safe places where people could go, and I think that the city needed the bars, and the bar owners took great leaps of faith to keep these bars open, because sometimes the police would be out there, like I said, alluded to in the past. But the bar culture wasn't an essential part of my socializing. But I like to go to bars. I like to dance. That's how life is, Certainly, people that have certain tastes are going to hang out with those people. And So there's some place for everybody, the National Women's National Women. There was a big like 4 or 5 day meeting that women could go to out in some not woodsy but open land, and you could tent and all the and so there was just something for everyone. But those of us who were in business, and I keep going back to that because I'm hoping you're going to ask me the question, but if you don't, I'll bring it up myself. But at any rate, there's a place for everybody, and still a lot of people entertained in their homes, and with the rise of AIDS, people became more concerned about where they went, and certainly had parties and so forth in their homes. It was very social culture. Yeah, it was led by gay people because that was our fight. And I hate to say fight, but it was. It was our issue. We'll call it that. But non-gay people, like we went to Article 12. The non-gay people got it, and donated money, and some didn't. That's okay. Queen City Careers Association.
Yeah.
I was
the gay chamber, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I created that, changed that. But I was the only woman president of that organization, and people liked it because it was. We held the meetings at the Netherland Hilton, and so people came after work, and a lot of gay people in business and all that. I mean, they just came over and had cocktails, and we'd have a meeting and have a speaker, and people would stand around and hang out. I beg your pardon, and Netherland Hilton loved it because we could throw back the booze, and I'm being mean, silly about it, but and a lot of the people who were the staff and setting the bars up, they were gay themselves, and they thought it was wonderful. So there were 2 other presidents, and I was invited to run for president, and I became president of the organization, and people loved it because I brought in interesting people, speakers and so forth, and they liked the fact that there was a woman who was gay but also was a business person, and we had a blast, and I invited everybody. I invited people from the city, and most of them didn't show up, but that was okay. And so that was every month. So people had something to look forward to, and so there, with the line dancers, there's a niche, and the business people, Queen City Careers Association. Yeah, and I learned. Let's see if I'm right. I learned about it from Michael Chanick's former partner, who said, "Oh, you should go to this," and he went as well. I don't think Chanick went, but at any rate, it was a great organization, and I can't remember what happened, but something happened that ultimately led us to shut the organization down. And then later, I was asked by this board that they were who they were, to revitalize it again, which I did. But and they didn't want a woman on the board, let alone leading it. And I realized that it was time to take a powder, and it tanked after a while. But having said that, and that's sort of underbelly, but the times had changed enough that people didn't really have to get together like that anymore. The other thing that was really important for communications was that, no, Alan didn't get me in that. Alan got me into alternating currents. And so I started my first. I looked in my tapes. This is the reason why I know it. But my first radio program was June 1st of 1991, and it was terrific, and people liked it for a wide variety of reasons. But again, when you're trying to create change and transformation, you have to find ways to get a lot of people in. And there were a lot of people listened to it every Saturday, 3 to 5. It was over in Waif on McMillan, East Walnut Hills, where I was living at that time. And people would tell me at parties, especially men, that on Saturday they would go out and get on their lawnmowers and put the earphones in that were at that time, or they would get in their car and go to do errands. They were married, and they wanted to learn what was going on. That, oh my gosh, there's gay people out there, and it was very important because and when you produce a show, you can either let it go on its own, or you can create additional pieces. And what I did was, because I knew of a lot of these organizations, I'd call them up and say, you want to get on the show? You don't have to give your name or anything, but tell our listeners, because that's how you're going to get more people. And so I had them every week, or once a month. I should say that. Probably the majority of them were once a month. What was going on, if they were having a party, if they were having an event, a fundraiser. Fundraisers were, the gay community sucked money out of everybody, especially the gays. But we needed that money to, if we were going to rent rooms, for meetings or whatever. And people loved it. And right after my show was a show called Every Woman, and it was all women's music, not all lesbian music, but women's music. And Waif was really great for a long time. That's what Alan and Chanik and somebody else named it. Yeah. One of my favorite stories, people learned, authors in particular, learned about where there were gay organizations and so forth. I don't know how, but at any rate, people would send me their books to read, and then I'd call them and I'd interview them. And so that would get the listener to, maybe I want to buy that book or whatever. So we did a lot of different interviews. And one of my very favorite ones, I thought about when I was looking at this, I thought, I want to tell this story because it's so funny. So at any rate, I got a message or a letter or something. I don't know if, I don't know. Somehow I got a letter or something from Absolute Vodka. And they wanted to know if I would interview their president and CEO. I was like, sure. So we set the time and all that, and he was just wonderful. And I said to him, well, why do you care about, I mean, you have a fabulous company. I don't drink vodka, but a lot of people do. And so what do you care? And not being mean. And he said, are you kidding me? All the gay bars across the United States constantly are buying Absolute Vodka. And that's why we put the colors on it, to let them know that Absolute Vodka stood up for gay rights. And I was like, yes, that's fabulous. So.
How'd the interview go?
Fine. Well, fine, of course. But it just shows that if you put the intention forth and you do, who knows who's going to come to you. Well, that was probably at least 15, 18 years. And we ended up moving because now WAIF is a community radio station. So, if you come to their board and you pitch them, about a show you'd like to have, if they like it, they'll do it. And so, and it just is what it is, okay? And so there are a lot of Black church people started getting shows, so they could play gospel music or whatever, which is cool, it's all good. And then they started getting on the board, and they didn't like the homosexuals. And so I would be, on my show, and some guy would come in and he'd start looking at stuff and standing over me. And I'd go, let's go to some music. And I'm like, what are you doing? Well, I sit on the board and I can go wherever I want. I'm like, but I'm on my show. You had to raise money for your show to, help WAIF pay its expenses. And we were one of the biggest fundraisers. We raised the most money, our show, not the most, but, everybody got it. You need to pay a little bit, $5, that's fine. And it just got to the point where there were certain people that were not going to let this go. And I had been invited at that time. See, God has a plan always. And sometimes you have to just sit and wait. I had gotten invited by, it was not CET, but VXU, I think, or one of the other stations, to come and help them create a low power FM radio show. And so I called everybody and said, all the programmers, and said, it's not going to get better. They don't like us because we're gay. That's the only reason. And we are not to ever have anything unpleasant to say. It's just live and let live. And if they want to take the station over, it's fine. We will go downtown. And so we did, and had the show at the same time and so forth. The problem was that low power FM isn't going to go up north, and it's not going to go across the river. And so it just, I just closed it and just said, that's the end. It was great fun and so forth. And I met a lot of people, and a lot of people learned a lot, of what was happening in the city of Cincinnati, and they were able to get out there and help create some change and transformation on their own too. I don't think so. There's a gay and lesbian community center that was being envisioned, and my partner at that time was elected the first chair of the board. And so I was involved with that somewhat, but not in leadership.
What was your partner's name?
Jill, my partner at that time, her name was Jill Benavides. As I was in sales and consulting for my business, I knew how to interview people because I did it all the time. And I knew how to listen. Because if you're so busy talking and telling your story, you're not paying attention to what's being said, nor do you have time to look at their body language or whether they're like, or bored or looking at their watches or whatever. So it was a good fit for me. I have at least one of them. I gave a lot of stuff to Ohio Lesbian Archives. I get it out of my third floor. I know that one, but I didn't. I don't think that I made a regular habit of taping it. And I think I just taped that one because that was my first one. And maybe it would have been productive for me to hear myself so that I would have feedback on how to do it better. But I didn't do that. In the first marches that we did were on a Sunday afternoon when there was nobody downtown. And those of us in QCCA would wear business clothing and carry our briefcases, and then other people, so other groups, and we'd march down to the dock, drink all day and hang out, laugh. The times did change in terms of whether we wanted to, do this in the safety of Sunday when there's no one around, to organizations that had not sprung up, but had gotten put together, and people were more interested in being more visible. The first Pride March that I ever went to was in San Francisco in '82. I had a girlfriend out there. And so I would go out, and she said, "Well, come out for Pride." And I was like, wow. It was wild. That was not going to happen in the Midwest for a long time. But the organizations all would have booths down at the dock and give information, and there'd just be all kinds of fun stuff. And then if it rained, everybody go in and drink and then come out and, and just go back to it. It was just fun. It was very social. And I don't remember who the first Pride Grand Marshal was. It may have been Patty Herman. I don't know. You might have to pick Channick's brain on that one. But it became, to be the Grand Marshal of Pride was to be someone that had done work and created change and transformation in the city, in the gay communities themselves and the organizations. So it was an honor. I was Grand Marshal in 2009. It was the last year that we started in Burnett Woods and came down Clifton and then cut over Hamilton Avenue and then went all along Hamilton Avenue across the viaduct and then down into North Side. So North Side was an epicenter. There were a lot of bars and dance clubs and so forth down there. So people loved North Side anyway. And there's a little park, and I can't remember the name of the park, but then there were booths and beer stands and all the rest of that stuff. And people, whether they were really out or not, and especially guys, would help put the floats together, and it was really a lot of fun. So back to 2009, we were sitting on top of, it was Dr. John Maddox and I were Grand Marshals that year, and we were sitting on top of a convertible, and Chanik was driving and somebody else was next to him. And we were waiting for traffic to go, and there were all these so-called Christians. And I am a Christian, I'm an Episcopal, but I wouldn't call them Christian at all. But at any rate, not to get my nose out of joint, but they just called us every freaking name in the book and everything. And I finally leaned down and said, "Shut up!" And they were, and by that time we started going. But it was just, that was their opportunity to spew all kinds of poison and so forth. But it remind me to tell you about announcing Pride. But North Side was just such a nexus, a magnet, and people lined the streets. There were like 10 and 15 on either side. Just from going down, let's see, Clifton to Hamilton or whatever it was, and crossing that viaduct. It was just crammed with people, and they loved it, and it was just fun, and there was aside from the important Christians, people just enjoyed it. And they brought their children out. This whole business about, I don't want trans people in front of children. Since when are children allowed in bars? But people would have their children out. People loved it. And so once we started across the viaduct, I told Michael to stop the car. I was going to get out and I was going to walk it, because all these people were cheering for me, because they all knew who I was. And they may not have seen me or whatever, but they knew who I was. And so John walked on one side, I walked on the other, and it was just masses of people. And I just held my hands out and let them take my hand and talk to me. And I just kept walking. I had to. And we walked down and into North Side, and then over where we would stand to watch all the other floats come by and so forth. It was wonderful, and the bars loved it because they made huge amounts of money. So back to announcing Pride. Well, I had alternating currents, and there were some really good engineers over at WAIF, and these were goofy guys. I mean, they were engineers, okay, and audio engineers. And so they were more than happy to, if we wanted to take Pride, like one year we were over at Lunken Airport. We had Pride over there one year, and they ran everything back through WAIF Studios, and they did for Pride as it came down through North Side too. And so I would go up to the top floor of this old building on North Side, and walk out on this really rickety fire escape, and be joined by a very large, fat, tall, drag queen. And I would announce the parade, so everybody could hear it who wasn't there. And that was one of my favorite things to do. I worried that we'd fall down because she was a big chick. But at any rate, it was a lot of fun. And it's about bringing people in. And if you can't get there, or you don't want to, you're not sure, but you could listen to it, put earplugs on and listen. Not plugs because they didn't have them back then, but so that was one of my very favorite things, and I did that year after year. Fun. That year, that was a really interesting year for me.
2009.
Yeah. I received, and this just shows how change finally takes its place. And I had finished my business career. Well, 9/11, sent a lot of highly compensated people out. The banks and financial institutions, you're gone. So I was always a big fan of Findlay Market, and sat on an organizational board to help kind of revitalize the market after there was so much racial problems and shootings and so forth. And so anyway, so that summer, I was asked to come down to the Elm Street end of the market, and I came down, and I was honored to be awarded a Kentucky Colonel Commission, and it's actually a commission in the military. And this was started after the war between the states, and the Kentucky officers were commissioned to go out and help Kentuckians rebuild their lives and so forth, and do good deeds and help out. And so I received that. Now the point of that isn't how cool I am. The point is that all those people that put my name forth and swore me in, they all knew I was gay. No one cared. That is transformation. Yeah. I got some honors from the leather bars and so forth too. You know why? I mean, not because I'm into leather, but because I was willing to put their information out on the radio program, and they just thought that was really great, and that I didn't have an attitude about it at all. I'm just telling the news, honey. That's all. You can do what you want. And I don't know that there are any leather bars in the city anymore. It's so much of what happened in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, all that changed with the internet and email and all that, and people quit interacting with one another because they could, talk online. There's nothing the matter with that. However, how do you create some of those lasting friendships? And through silly times and through some tough times, that's what creates friends. And so a lot of that's gone, and it's not ever going to return. If it does, it'll return in some other form, and maybe that's what's happening now. Whether Cincinnati is getting a gay community, an organized gay community back. There's loads and loads and loads of gay people here now that are out, because it doesn't matter now. A lot of gay people voted for Roxanne Qualls. Do you remember her? Okay. Well, she was a house painter, but her partner was an assistant to Tarbell. But at any rate, so Roxanne wanted to run for mayor. And I'm telling you, there was so much gay money that went into her campaigns. Because she's gay. And she wouldn't come out. She never came out. And it pissed everybody off so much. I'm like, are you kidding me? You can help us. And this is a long time ago. You could help us. And she wouldn't do it. And that was it for me and Roxanne. And then she went off to England, I don't know, I think she had a teaching position or got a PhD or whatever. Good for her, you know. Came back with a husband and all that, and it's like, well, maybe we're just opportunistic, you know. Who cares? And so after I received the Crowley honor, Roxanne sent me a note and congratulated me on what I had done. And then I saw her. She comes to Christ Church Cathedral on occasion, and she came up to me afterwards and said, "You did the work." And I said, "Yeah. And look, didn't hurt me." But it's, you know, I can't, even though it aggravated me, I can't fault her for that, because that was her life path. But and when you're getting a lot of money, and when you're a politician and you're getting a lot of money out of people, they very often would like something. But at any rate, you know, Roxanne's fine, whatever. Well, it got harder because the people that had taken over Pride and some other organizations, they wanted to take it downtown, and they took it to Fountain Square, and it was a train wreck because there were just too many people, and you couldn't even get a beer. You know, you couldn't do anything. It was a mess. It was a big cluster, and there was my office was in U.S. Bank, and there was a little bar across the street, and you know, it was gay and straight, and you know, just a little bar, and I thought, I want a beer, and I'm never going to get one here. And I went over, had a beer, talked to a couple of people, talked about what's going on over there, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm going home. And so that ended that. Everything has to change. And I was at the point where I was finished with it. I traveled extensively. My job changed. And I couldn't do it anymore because I would get home on Friday night. I would have to go into my office on Saturday and download everything I had done. You know, I'd drive along and have my tape recorder and explain it all to myself and then get it all done. And then Monday or Tuesday, I'd be on the road and I'd be gone again. I couldn't do anything anymore. And I felt like I did it all anyway. And that's not like, gee, how great I am. I'm not. I have made lots of mistakes in my life, and I still continue to. But that's human. But and you need to. It's been my philosophy for a long time to, in terms of leadership. You know, you create some change and transformation. Then you need to step aside so that others have the opportunity to serve, so that they can bring their voice to the table. And so it was fine. Yeah. We had a gay newspaper. Did you know about that? GLBT News.
Oh, yeah, GLBT.
Yeah. And the guy that published that died, and that died. And so, you know, all these things changed. I'm at the risk of getting my nose out of joint. Pride morphed like everything changes and morphs. And, you know, and there were straight people with their children. To them, it was a big party. And it was fun to see those big fat ladies in wigs and long dresses and so forth. And it just, I was finished. My part of all of this was finished. And it's up to, and I said this when I received the Crowley honor, we finished our work, and now it's up to young people to carry this forward. Not just carry on, but carry it forward and create more change so that we can live into the healthiest, best lives we can. And I just looked at Pride as had become a big party, and which it is a big party, but it ceased being a gay and gay-friendly party to a big party where people would go down to, my nose is not out of joint. I feel like what I'm saying is mean-spirited, but it just became different, and I don't go. Well, it is corporatized, and that's a good point, because companies started realizing that a lot of their most progressive employees were leaving Cincinnati with Article 12. And they would say, I had friends who were like, transfer me to New York, transfer me to Atlanta, transfer me. I'm out of Cincinnati and I'll never come back. And so when corporations lose talent, they're smart people. They don't care about whether you're queer or not. Most of them don't. But so that was a real problem. And so giving money to Pride, and you're buying your way in, who cares, whatever, like P&G and all that. That's a good thing, it shows that the banks and all these businesses are very gay friendly, and Macy's hires a lot of designers. It's all good. I have to stop on that because I quit going. So I don't know whether they continued to give money or if there's a Pride march that goes down anymore or what. So next question. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
And that's all right. I think gay life is so stable now that, whatever. Absolutely, I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely. Because, gay was immediately, Dr. Fauci was working over in countries in Africa. Africa's a continent, so, Uganda or wherever, on AIDS. But not in the United States. Only homosexuals get AIDS. And so there's a lot of noses in the air about helping gay people who, or people with AIDS, because maybe they were gay. And that was the advent of AIDS Volunteers of Cincinnati, AVOC, and Caracal. AVOC's gone, Caracal is still here. It's a remarkable organization. And if you get a chance, you should interview Linda Seiter, who's the executive director. She's remarkable. Linda, Seiter. Get an interview with her and tell her Cheryl said so. So a lot of us volunteered whatever we could do. So Linda Seiter's organization tried to find housing for people with AIDS because they get kicked out of their house. You're a teenager, you get kicked out of your house. You can't get a job. It was dreadful. And so all of us took our time to sit on the board and do fundraisers. Oh, we had the best fundraisers. They were so much fun. And again, wealthy straight people were willing to open their fabulous homes up, and but all of this was to raise money to make sure that people could get drugs and so forth, and it was horrible. A friend of mine, his partner worked in the hospital, and he got AIDS somehow. But they were a partner, but who knew, how he got it. But at any rate, so he was home, and his partner wanted him to die at home. and Eric. I can't remember their names, but at any rate, he died, and so the partner called the funeral home, and the funeral home came. They were very nice, and they double bagged his body, and I was so offended, and I just told the surviving partner, let's go into another room, because that was incredibly insulting. So the fight against AIDS gave a lot of people the opportunity to pull together and give money and so forth, and they may not go to pride events, but they would fight against AIDS. And now AIDS is considered to be manageable. It still kills people, but a lot of us got behind all of that, and it was hard on the gay communities. And Northern Kentucky AIDS did the same thing as Cincinnati, and we tried to talk with them and help them. So I would say it would be Covington and Newport and so forth, the people that lived in town. So AIDS was tough, and that is one of the major reasons why the drag community got so organized. And the drag shows, the drag shows are one thing, but they would have once a year an event, and they would crown the new emperor and empress, and then the rest of the year they would go around doing fundraisers for AIDS. And then they would, at the end of the year, deliver checks. And it was very social, and a lot of these people were business people, and a lot of them were not. But it was huge fun, and people bought tables, and they had it downtown, and it was it was a blast, and all for a good reason, for a terrible reason. But they, the drag communities were in their height because of all the good work they did in gowns and heels. Yeah. And I received an honor from them, and because I promoted them on my radio show, and I've always had a great strong feeling for it, but I don't see that cohort very much anymore, or maybe it's just because I'm old and I don't go out, But I mean, I go out, but the events, I don't think they have that anymore. For excuse me, for coronation, yeah, they did them mostly in one of the big hotels. Yeah, well, think the hotels cared, and it was not a bunch of horrible people that were vomiting, and everything was neat and clean, and everybody, not that they were on their best behaviors, but they had a reason to be there. And all of us that came and bought tables and they do drag performances, and I'd go to the bank before coronation and get $50 or whatever in singles, because you go out and then all that money, they'd pour it down and they put the hat out again, and all for an important cause.
Now, they were raising money for ABOC or for individuals or both?
No, they were raising money for the fight against AIDS. And so that the current reign, emperor and empress would decide where it went, and they might decide that it should go to Caracol, or it should go to Abach, or it should go to Northern Kentucky. It should go where? That was their decision. Our job was to go have a great time and give them money. That period's over. You know, people, AIDS is manageable. You see gay people on television. You see, you know, drag queen, whatever. It's just different now, which I'm glad. That means that we have changed, and we have transformed ourselves into something better. All of the cohorts that we've been talking about. Yeah, late 80s and 90s. Yeah, maybe 95 was the last time I did it, because I was just gone all the time from my work. And U.S. Bank wanted me to move up there, and I wouldn't, because my partner had just gotten a new job, and I didn't want to move up there. And they said, fine, you can manage it from there. So I stayed in a hotel 3 or 4 nights a week and came home. And so that really put an end to a lot of stuff that I did. And that's okay, you know, bring other people in. Well, the parade, remember I was telling you about the route. So floats would you know, have about, you know, beat AIDS or whatever. But it was a part of all of that, of the conversation. You and I have just gotten to it, but, you know, we aren't actually going in a fashion of like 88, 89, 90, you know, we're bouncing all over. So, but AIDS has always been a part of it. Be happy, because you can die, and we all will die, you know, I mean, we're all, you know, but yeah, enjoy life. And at Christmas, the florists used to create these big Christmas wreaths. So they were fabulous, and they were all decorated and everything. And everybody go down to the dock, and the drag queens would be out there, and they would be auctioning these fabulous wreaths off. And of course, money went to AIDS. And so there were just so many bits and pieces of things that just made up the whole fabric of how we lived back then. And you know, and they sold Christmas trees too, and so that's where I got my Christmas trees. You know, my money was always going back in. But you know, in my business life, I was not that I was a completely different person. I was the same person. I was just doing it wasn't a day job. I was doing my career, and that you can do both. Early, I had to be careful. Now you can do it right out loud. And churches kind of looked down their noses at people with AIDS for a long time. And Church of Our Savior over on Auburn would welcome gay people and people with AIDS. And on Thursday night of Pride weekend, they would have a church service, and everybody could come and I asked Mother Paula, you should interview her too, if I could make a speech. And everybody knew me, and I gave really good speeches, and she's like, well, sure. And, you know, we're in the midst of this horrible fight with the city, you know, and with citizens of Cincinnati, who were like, you know. And I read, it was Lincoln's speech I can't remember the speech. It was during the Civil War. He gave this speech, and it didn't make sense until almost the end, and it was about getting out there and fighting for what's right. And it was, you could hear a pin drop. I'll remember it when I'm home this afternoon. But we just had to be out there in every way we could. Chrissy and I went to, she was Catholic, I'm not, but we went to St. George because she was an overeater, and they had OA meetings there. And so when we met, I started going to St. George, and we really liked it, and it was really progressive, and a lot of the priests were gay, and there were people from all over that went to St. George. And the Archdiocese did not like that, and it closed St. George down. And so, it was just sickening what they did to us. And so we didn't go for a long time, and then we split. And then my next partner and I went to Mount Auburn Presbyterian, and that was good. And then they hired a minister who is like 6'6", and it's like, not all men are like this, but there are a lot of men who are really tall. They're looking out that way. They're not looking down, and it's part of their personality. And he just was, he could deliver some really good sermons, but as a human, he wanted me, I had been in training to help be involved with their finances, and he didn't want me in that. He wanted a man in that. And he wanted me to manage the early childhood, the parenthood. And I said, well, my partner has a master's degree in early childhood. She would like a child, and I don't want a child. And if you put me in there, I won't do it, because she would throw a fit, rightly. And so we ended up living. And so I didn't attend church for a long time. And as a matter of fact, some of the people broke off and had another little church community down on Main Street. The Gettysburg Address. I knew it would come. At any rate, and so I had finished my business career, partially thanks to 9/11, and I was a big public market lover. And there was a whole group of us that were big Findlay Market fans, and that we were trying to lobby the city. The city owns the market. That's the normal thing. And I came from Cleveland, in the West Side Market. It's owned by the city of Cleveland, but it's managed by a nonprofit management company. So we lobbied and worked to get that started, and then I became the first marketing director. And my job was to get TV cameras to the market to show people that the market was clean and safe and wonderful and all that. And I've just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? I do this all the time.
We started on churches and then.
Oh, yes. So we wanted to open the market on Sunday. And you would have thought we had, just said evil things, because they were like, well, we need to be home in church. And I'm like, you're not in church all day. You're home drinking beer like I am. And so we finally got the city to allow us to open the market on Sundays. So I was there on Sundays. And that's when I did the majority of my events, get the TV cameras down there. And so my boss, this is probably too much information, but my boss went to the board of directors because he didn't like the way that some of the monies were being used. And we'll leave it at that. But at any rate, he ended up quitting. He was like, well, I'm not putting up with this at all. And so they hired somebody else who had no concept of what he was doing, and he fired me after 2.5 months because he could do my job. So I was like, okay. So I was a big reader from the days of St. George, of the Jesus Seminar and the Jesus Scholars. And Bishop John Shelby Spong came to Cincinnati, and he was out in Marymount. And I was like, when am I going to see one of the Jesus Scholars? So I went out, and it was a 3-hour presentation, and he said, if you want a shortened version of this, I'm going to be at Christ Church Cathedral tomorrow. And so I don't work on Sunday. So I went there, and as I was walking back to my car, I thought, I could come back here. I mean, it just came out of me, and I kept coming. I sat in the back and everything, and I got to know the dean, Gail Greenwell, and her husband, and lo and behold, there were people that I knew, from the gay community, and I joined, and it completely changed my life, and then Gail got me involved in some of the liturgy work, and I'm the head verger for the cathedral today, and I'm very happy about that. And we took pilgrimages to Israel and Scotland. We did all kinds of things. The cathedral is so wonderful, and it's Episcopal, and we don't care who you are, get in here. And if you hate us, we don't care, get in here. You just can't have a gun or a knife. And people do on the street, they'll come. And it's a remarkable faith community, and I'm really honored to be a part of it. So I was with the insurance company from 77 to 83, 83 to 93 with the actuarial firm. You never send actuaries out to clients. That's why you have consultants who know how to talk. And then he retired, and then I went to U.S. Bank, and I was there from 93 till the very beginning of 2003, when we all got canned. And I went to unemployment and said they're telling me that I'm not good, that I wasn't an employee that produced assets for them. And I said, I'll show you my W-2s if you'd like to know how bad I was. And she said, don't worry, Cheryl, we can get them ourselves. And I thought, whoa, this chick is bad. and I ended up getting unemployment because the banks were just shedding people because they were trying to shed money. That period was so difficult. First of all, 9/11 was difficult on people. I remember walking into my office and people were standing around this TV, and I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, well, there's just been this jet just blew into this, it was just really difficult. And the stock markets were up and down, and it was just horrible. And so, it took them a while to figure out what they were going to do, and then they just started firing us. But that's, again, God has a plan. I needed to be at Findlay Market.
Why did 9/11 impact the banking industry? Why was it so impactful on that sector?
Because the United States was under siege. from an international terrorist organization. It wasn't like, well, that doesn't impact us. It impacts everything. The stock market was up and down because we didn't know what was going to happen. When was the last time the United States was under siege? Let's see, Civil War. It was so shocking at a visceral sense that this would happen to us, and that wake up, George Bush was in office, and the federal government had to figure out what was going on in the Middle East because they weren't paying attention. And I mean, who am I? Maybe they were paying some attention, but they didn't expect that. And so then all of a sudden you find Iraq and Afghanistan. All those people want to take over. They want to get rid of the Christians and the Jews. Those are against them. Yeah. So it was a visceral shock to the nation and to all of us. And it's something like that does tend to bring you together. But there's people that, I was against the war in Vietnam. I mean, I knew guys from my high school graduating class in 1969, they were gone. And some of them came back, some of them didn't. So it wasn't like I was a big war lover, But this was different. So yeah, that's why. I did a couple of little gigs, and I was like, I don't need to work. Why am I working? I have plenty of assets. I'm safe. Why am I working? I would just think. It took me 2 years to stop thinking that I needed to work.
You seem like an industrious person.
So. Thank you. I was like, I can do what I want now, and I do a lot of charity work. I can read. I love to read, and almost everybody who is the same, post-career as me, we're all like, oh, I can sit down and read, and yeah, it's not time for you yet. When I was traveling, I had enough time to go to the hotel room, put my clothing out for tomorrow, go eat dinner, come back, look at my notes for the next day, go to bed. And you get to know your own home again. I've lived in that house since 2009. And it's like, why do I and so I'm at St. Vincent DePaul down on Bank Street all the time, like giving them clothing I don't wear and records and so forth, I had a lot of records and then CDs for my radio program, and I gave as many of them, I think, as I had to OLA, and some books too. Well, Phoebe, I don't remember. She's just not just, but I don't know. She was a lesbian librarian. I don't know. I met. I want to say, I met. I wear hearing aids, and the antennas start popping up. And I think I met Alan before I met Michael.
Michael's former partner, right?
Yeah, Al Black, yeah. And I didn't like Michael. He was pretty obnoxious, and he was a smart man, but he could just be unnecessarily rude, and he got the chance to grow too. And because he did a lot of work. He was with P&G. He was a smart man, and he got P&G on board. Open your eyes, all the gay people who work. So I mean, that's a place where he has his mark on history. And you know, he was doing stuff with alternating currents too. And everybody gets a chance to change and grow, and especially as we get older, like it doesn't matter anymore. And so yes, he's quite mellowed, and you know, we genuinely like and respect one another, because we're on the other side now, the other side of all of that, and we get to be who we are now. In the present, I mean, we're always who we are, but at this time in our lives, it's a freedom that's informed by experience, and that's something to remember. That, you know, you can be free, but if you don't have anything to back you up in terms of experience or money or good friends, or you know, all of the that safety net that we develop through our lives. No, it's got to happen, and that's why you lived at 70 and 80. So I know that, I beg your pardon, for every decade of my life, I've been different. So if it's the 50th anniversary, and I will be 72 in August, so you can see how young I was. All times have some real challenges to them, but sometimes you get them by the sackful. And I think the United States got them by the sackful. And now some of the things that people are doing are like, they're beyond me. I think my 50s were pretty tough. My 60th birthday, my birthday's in August, and I had people in all 3 floors of my home, out in the front, out in the back. I mean, you know, I had conglomerated so many people through the years that it was a real blast. And you know, I've lost jobs, I've gotten jobs, I've enjoyed generally pretty good health. I've gotten wonderful partners and lost them. One of my partners is deceased, and so, you know, it's all good, and it's difficult. Each one is difficult. It was. A couple of friends of mine said, "We're just going to go stand in the kitchen and be the bartenders," because I had cases of champagne, you know, because I like champagne, so well, you're going to have it if you don't like it. But those are the things of a good life, and I've had some challenges and difficulties with my family, my blood family, my older sister, my parents, my mother in particular. You know, she could read the handwriting on the wall, and she didn't like what she saw. There was a shame on them. Yeah. And the only reason why, and my folks are deceased, you know, but my partner who's deceased now was an artist, and my mother was an artist, and so they had things to talk about. And Christine got her this a subscription to this art magazine, and they talked about art. And when she quit coming to dinner, and I came by myself, and then ultimately came with another partner, my mother was so furious that she was like, "Leave." My parents did their best. I am not putting my parents down. You just asked me a question, and they loved their children. They wanted children. They didn't expect they were going to get a gay daughter. I didn't expect it either, but I've been pretty happy about it.
Was Chrissy the partner that passed away?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Oh, what were you supposed to do?
Well, we had broken up.
Oh.
But we just had one of those silver threads between us that we just, we just could never let go of one another. And so we remained in touch. And she had moved to DC. But at any rate, that's a good thing. My last partner, I don't see anymore, and that's fine. Do you have any bullet points of what problems there are for gay people?
Well,
AIDS is manageable. You can't fire a person for being gay. You can't deny them employment if they're competent. What could be better? I mean, I don't know. I think instead of saying what could be better as if the environment or circumstances could be better for us, is that what do we need to keep doing to make it, to make sure that people see us as human beings first, and that we contribute to society and we contribute to fun things, and that we live our, we have our own houses and so forth. One of the, just back to old history, this thing about marriage equality, people were like, well, we want to get married because, we love one another. But it wasn't about what happened at the front of the church. It was about what happened at the back. Because when you sign the legal agreement, that's when you both have legal rights and opportunities. So, I was traveling extensively. Almost my whole business career, I was gone a lot, and Christine and I decided we were going to buy this house over on Highland, and so I went to my insurance agent and said, I want to get a life insurance policy because I'm on the road all the time, and I could be killed in a car accident. And trust me, I've seen a lot of them going up and down, down from Kentucky all the way up to Cleveland. And he said, the underwriters won't take it. And so he said, you have an older sister, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, put her on it. And then in 3 or 4 years, come back, and then we'll be able to change it to Christine's name. So I'm really glad that stuff like that doesn't have to happen anymore. So many little things, having the opportunity to own property together and all that stuff, it's a business. And so you have to be ready to make sure that if anything happens, that you're not stuck out on the street or whatever. And I don't think that would happen just because somebody's gay. I think that part of it's gone. And there's gay people on TV, and there's, it's so whatever. That doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who they don't like gay people, because they're out there. But I would have the right now to just have an insurance policy for her. Well, if we have to go back to the streets, I think that some gay people would go back to the streets, just like a long time ago. Some people wouldn't, because they don't, they're, even though their company has a non-discrimination clause, you can't juggle with that. But I think gay people need to continue to be out, so that people know that we're everywhere. And in terms of churches that, like, I think what is it, Crossroads or whatever, that they still aren't antsy about gay people. And you can either march in front of them or you can just let them go. And my opinion is, let them be. They're not going to change. If they change, and it will be a change of heart. And as far as this business of the South, I believe it's a lot of political motivation and a lot of a type of religion that is I don't know what to call it, but it's a religion that requires you can only do thus and such, and there's nothing you can do about that. Gay people could go complain about it, but that is only, in my opinion, at this time in life, going to give them more fuel for the fire. And this BS about these drag queens. You have to be 21 to get into a bar. So how are they going to be exposed to little children? Right? So you try to refocus with truth. That's one big way. No, that's not going to happen because there's children aren't. And this whole thing with trans, again, let's define what all this is. A person who does drag is not a trans person. They get up, dress in high heels and gowns and raise money for causes. Now, people who decided that they are not the body that they are born in is not. I've known several people, and it's like excruciating for them. And there's been so much advancement in the medical world on how to successfully create that transition physically, and then supporting it emotionally and mentally after the person goes through it. And that shouldn't be allowed to be put down. Those are the unfortunately, we have to go to the fringes now, I guess, to answer the question. Is these are creepy little things that haven't ever gone away, and I don't know what I can do except each one teach one at this time in my life, but I just recently finished George Bush's book about he and Cheney, and their lives were so completely different, and Cheney has a gay daughter who's married and who has a child, but yet they didn't want to allow, equality for gay people. Now, how screwed up is that? Because they're playing to a group. Dick Cheney loved his daughter-in-law, and his wife too. But they were playing to a political base, and they're still playing to a political base, although it's getting really creepy and fringy. I think there's a lot of testing. We'll throw out this and see if this works. And if it does, then we'll, massage it some more. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to bring something else out. It's early in this election season. And and there are just people who aren't going to change, and to let them alone. And put your efforts toward positive things. I absolutely despised Trump. Guy with chicken yellow hair and wears orange pancake makeup. It's like, these baggy suits. Like, you sure he's not a queen? I mean, it's just awful. And
we dress better than I said we dress better than that.
yeah. Oh my God, yeah. And so he's still out there, and he's stirring the crap and so forth. But the MAGA people, they don't want people like me or you, gay friendly. They don't want you. They want the votes of the people that are, they focus on rural areas as if rural people, don't have any sense. And some of the other people that are out there now, I mean, it's in some ways the same thing, only a different decade. Oh, well, I think gay people need to, excuse me, if there are organizations, I don't know how many organizations are out there anymore, but people can say their piece, and living well is the best revenge. You buy property, live on it, do a good job at your career, and I don't know. My nose is not out of joint at all, but pride can't be about drag queens running it and making money for themselves. And I think, what is her name? She had her foot amputated. Brooklyn. Yeah. I think Brooklyn needs to have some clear eyes watching her. Because when pride becomes your job, where does the money go? Take it as it is. And if Brooklyn sees this tape, then she can bitch me out or not. But there are people out there who will use something for their own betterment. Next. A long time ago, that is really a huge leap, because a long time ago there were no gays in the Black community. The Black men had sex with men, but there were no gays. Well, except for the Queen playing the organ at church. So that means that young people are going to have to offer people that are in, what's her name, in her position to exit, and not make money for herself on Pride. What's her name? I can't remember her name.
You're talking about Brooklyn?
Yeah, Brooklyn. Okay. Yeah. So it's time for new leaders to step up.
I felt like I had to try.
Mm-hmm. Well, you never know. that may go away at some point. The question is whether you will have the desire to step back in or not. I really wish that, it's snowing. I really wish that, I guess, is it Phoebe? Who runs it? Phoebe, yeah. She's got a case of white knuckles. And that needs to get out of the church basement. Yeah. when I took over a bunch of CDs and stuff from my time, alternating currents and all the books I had got and everything. I mean, you could barely walk around in it.
It's overflowing.
Yeah. And how is it possible to get anything when it's just... So the issue is Phoebe needs to open her hand, give it to the universe, and she's not willing to do that. Now, I think Scott has tried, and Chanik has tried to talk to her about it. I've tried to talk to her about it a little bit. But when you're holding on with white knuckles, and there is an Ohio Lesbian Archives in Columbus. It should be brought in instead of... And you've had me here for 2 hours and 15 minutes, and you've seen how I've had to let go and move on. I mean, in order to be healthy and give it to somebody else, give leadership to somebody else so that they can bring their flavor to it. And that's the only way to be healthy.
I'm with you on that.
And on that note,
You ready to quit?
I'm finished.
Sure.